Chairman and board members, this is an engagement letter that was executed with the authority of the Director of Electric Utilities last week to begin work on finding protest and defending our renewal and installation of SPS on May 24th. This is an engagement of the law firm of Reed Smith, in particular Michael Ruffy, Washington, D.C. firm lawyer. We're very comfortable with Mr. Ruffy and the law firm, and we recommend that the board ratify this engagement.
Other discussion? Any questions? Any other questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. Here, so that would, we lost our, remind everybody how these work. I think you have to tap it, and if the light's on, you're broadcasting, so to speak. Okay, then we would go back to item 3, presentation and discussion of the fiscal year 2016-2017 draft operating budget and capital program and rate and tariff schedule. Mr. Burchett.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. We began this presentation at the last meeting last month, and unfortunately ran out of some time due to a little bit longer than expected executive session and due to the swearing-in ceremonies for the mayor and councilors Massengale and Joy. So we wanted to complete the presentation today, and I'm going to very quickly go over my portion because I did get through all of mine, but I'll kind of go back and do a real quick overview of what I did, and then I'll turn it over to Chad to go into the detail that he didn't get to go into at the last meeting. So just to highlight this budget, some of the things that it's incorporating this year is some significant capital investment. Most of that is related to transmission. The capital program over the next 6 years is about $333 million. So it's a very significant impact in the budget and really the driver of all of the items included in our budget for the most part. Cook Steam Unit, as you all know, that the steam units have been taken out of our unit contingent agreements with Xcel Energy, so that has had an impact on the budget going forward, mostly to the tune of reducing expenditures. In the forward-looking, and this year and in future years, we are beginning to utilize some of the reserves. There are some our reserves are above the policy levels, and so you will see going forward that we have anticipated the use of reserves to eliminate some volatility and rate increases. This budget does incorporate a base rate adjustment of 5.75%, and I'll go over that in just a moment. We've also begun to incorporate the integration into ERCOT, and so in the forward-looking portion of our modeling, we do have the impacts both on a revenue and an expense basis included. Transmission cost of service revenues, as you all know, once we have constructed our large transmission projects, we'll be able to put those into the RTO, our Regional Transmission Organization, and begin receiving revenues, and those are included in the future years of our modeling. And then another item for this year, and Chad will go into more into this in a moment, but we have converted our accounting system into the FERC uniform system of accounts, and as I said, Chad will go into some of the impacts that has had on our budget in just a few moments. So, the focus of this budget is very consistent with what we've presented to you over the last couple of years. First focus of our budget has been to anticipate Lubbock's energy needs, and so obviously this community relies on us to provide reliable and affordable electricity. And the way we accomplish this, at least in the initial term, is to implement future projects to ensure that our power grid is prepared for the long term. The second focus of this budget is doing what our customers expect and what they expect of a well-run utility. This budget does incorporate some significant transmission improvements to construct what we're calling an inner 69 kV loop and an outer 115 kV loop. In the fiscal year 16-17, we have $24.4 million of new lines and the rebuild of lines. We have $11.4 million just for the design and engineering for future transmission projects that total almost $104 million. And then we have $13.6 million included for substation projects. I showed you this map last month, and You can see in green, light green, those inner lines, that would be our inner 69 kV loop. And then the blue lines are the 115 kV transmission lines that would be considered the outer loop. Many of these lines are already in place and have already been insulated for 115 kV, but there still are portions of those lines that have not, and there are substations that are not capable of being energized at 115 kV. So that's the bulk of what these costs are included in this budget. Again, here's a high-level summary of each of the projects that are in your capital program, starting on page 21 of your budget document. We've provided you a new layout this year in the capital program that kind of groups like projects together to kind of help you get a little bit better idea of what's going on. But the transmission piece of this next 6-year period is about $255 million, or about 3/4 of the total capital program is related to transmission. So you can see, as I mentioned earlier, that is a very significant piece. This next fiscal year, the year that you will be approving next week, we're including almost $71 million of capital funding for our all of the transmission upgrades. In that year, we will cash fund about 21% of that, and debt finance about 78% of that. That does not necessarily fit with our financial modeling agenda, basically to fund our projects with 35% cash and 65% debt. But over the 6-year period of our capital program, we will be hitting that target. We will be at the 35% cash to 65% debt. But due to the size and magnitude of the projects this year, we needed to fund a little bit more out of debt. But over time, we will hit that target and will intend to hit that target. The next thing under doing what customers expect is the upgrade and replacement of aged customer service infrastructure. What we're wanting to do is improve all the touch points that we have with our customers, and one of the initial things and first things that we want to do is to replace the current billing system. The billing system we have in place right now, as I told you last month, has been replaced since 2001, so it's a 15-year-old software system. It is inflexible and aged, and so we intend to replace that upon your approval. And what that will also do is provide a roadmap for us to implement advanced meters, and that's included in one lump sum project that includes a new billing system along with advanced meters and all the background communication networks and meter data management systems that are required for that. I did want to highlight, though, this next fiscal year there would be no deployment of any meters related to this. Really, this first year is a fact-finding mission and a scoping of the overall project for that, and also an input from citizens on that information. So that is also, it's not a very big portion of the overall capital program. It's big, but it's dwarfed by the size of the transmission infrastructure, but it's still a significant piece of our capital program. And then the final focus of our budget was maintaining and containing our costs. We have implemented over $2.2 million of cost savings in this budget. There have been some offsetting added costs related to a lot of our implementation and integration into ERCOT. But overall, we still have a net reduction in our controllable expenses of about $1.1 million in this budget. So we're very proud of that. And then my last slide, because of the magnitude of the transmission, obviously I've mentioned earlier that we are recommending a rate increase just on the base rate portion of the customer's bill, which is usually about 1/3 of their overall bill. We're recommending a 5.75% rate increase. Our methodology for rate management has been consistent over the last several years. The smaller incremental adjustments are the most responsible way to manage this utility and support our customers. And a couple of years ago, we came to you and said we anticipate that over the next 4 to 5 years, we will have base rate increases of 5.75%. That still holds true today. This is our 3rd year of that increase, and we expect it to continue for 2 more years. The impact to the average residential customer during the cooler months of the year, October through May, the impact on a monthly basis for a customer using 1,000 kilowatt hours is $1.86, and during the 4 months of the summer is $2.51. Blended over the course of the year is just a little over $2. So So that basically sums up my overview of my presentation from last month, and I'll turn it over to Chad unless y'all have any questions at this point.
Any questions for Randy? Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? All right. Thank you for having me. Andy went over all of his stuff from last month, and I just wanted to take a little bit deeper dive to look at the operating budget. So you can see some pretty big changes jump off the page right off the bat. You can see that total funding sources decreased about $7.3 million. Total department level expenses decreased about $10.4 million, and out of that $10.4 million, 9.3 of it is out of our control. Total fund level expenses, our debt service, our transfers to the city, those sorts of things, are up about $4.3 million. And again, you can see there in the middle column at the bottom, we anticipate using about $670,000 of our reserves, as Andy mentioned a few minutes ago. Here's a quick snapshot of our department level expenses. And I'm going to go into more detail in a moment on compensation, benefits, supplies, fuel, and purchase power. But one thing I do want to say is that capital outlay and maintenance, for all intents and purposes, basically remained flat. So compensation, what were the drivers there? Compensation and benefits, we increased the amount that we're going to be charging to the capital program from 15.6% to 18.6%, or about $700,000 between the two categories. Health insurance increased $652 per full-time employee. Workers' comp went down quite a bit, $143,000, and that's based on actual payroll for 14-15 and then the number of claims. And then to be in lockstep with the city, we have incorporated a 2% increase for full-time employees. You can see that we have reorganized our staffing according to the different functions and the needs that are required in each. But you can see that from 15-16 to 16-17, our staffing remained at 303 positions. So the first thing that we changed was, you can see the cuts on the left. Almost all of those changes came from, actually all of the changes did come from our production department, and those were 7 vacant positions that were valued at about $566,000. And as we grow and evolve and get ready to move into ERCOT, our needs are changing in the distribution and transmission arena. And so you can see that we have added 7 positions, 5 of which are related to distribution and transmission, and those are valued at $324,000. So I just wanted to walk you through on a couple of these big line items at a high level. How do we get from last year's budget to this year's budget? So at the top, the $16,122,000 was last year's budget, and this year's was about $15.5 million. So the first thing that I want to mention was a decrease of almost $400,000, and that's changes in payroll that have happened this fiscal year. And that's largely due to us reclassifying higher paid positions that were vacant into lower paid positions as our needs have changed. And then also we've seen a fair amount of retirements. And so as the higher paid employees retire and people step up to fill their jobs, we've seen some savings there. A moment ago I mentioned the allocation to salaries going to capital has increased, which means obviously a decrease in our O&M budget. You can see the cut for the 7 vacant positions and our 7 new positions offsetting that, and then the 2% salary increase is how we get there. On the benefits, as you would expect, benefits also decreased, and there's a strong correlation between compensation and benefits, and that maxim holds true again this year. TMRS and FICA went down based on the payroll changes I just mentioned. Workers' compensation I've already discussed, and hospital insurance. I mentioned that the premium of $652 increase per employee went up, and so that actually offsets some of our savings that we would have otherwise seen in our benefits. So our supplies, excluding fuel and purchase power. Yes, sir.
When you get past the salaries part, what, if any, do we anticipate the impact of this overtime pay issue that's supposed to kick in December. Do we see much of an impact on us in that regard?
I don't know that we have looked at that.
Yeah, we haven't taken a deep look at that yet.
It's a good
We will
question.
do that when we get back.
While we're at compensation,
Sure.
you don't mind, Chad, starting on, I guess, 16 and 17
Yes, sir.
in the handout, it looks like we've moved some dollars around in all the production locations. Just looking at the changes between Cook, Brandon, Massengale, and production operations,
Yes, sir.
I guess from what you're saying, basically all that nets out to about the same dollars. There's an overall decrease in production.
There was an overall decrease in production offset by some increases in distribution and transmission.
Well, I've noticed that. That was my next question. So,
Chad does have some slides that kind of roll up production.
okay, all right.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
Go
good.
ahead.
And I should have said that to start with. So these are the high level changes at a global overview, but I'm gonna dig into the functions,
Okay.
and discuss some of the
Okay.
questions
I
that
didn't
you
get you off track.
No, you're good. So supplies, when we exclude for fuel and purchase power, went down about $200,000, and it's largely driven by the production changes where we amended the contract with Xcel Energy for the unit contingent contract with the 2 steam turbines out at Cook Station. So this is our biggest change in the budget, and this is the power marketing fuel. And so you can see that at Brandon and Massengale on the expense side, we've decreased it by about $6.8 million. And so it's obviously a huge decrease. And so I just wanted to take a little bit of time to delve into this, kind of explain how we got here. In 2014-15, in August, our unit contingent contracts with Xcel for these 2 stations expired. And so we entered the market, SPP integrated marketplace in 15-16 for the first time, and we used all the information that we had available to build a predictive model that would anticipate every hour out of the 8,760 hours available in a year, to determine based on locational marginal prices, gas prices, heat rates, etc., on whether or not those stations would be dispatched. And so that's how we got such a big budget last year, because we made the best decision we could based on the information that we had. Well, now we're a year down the road, and we have some historical information to help update our model. And so we're still using the same model, but we've updated with new inputs and additional assumptions based on that historical dispatching we've seen over the last year. So we still modeled every possible hour as it could theoretically run, and then we overlaid on top of that the historical percentage on what we've seen by month. And so essentially that brings our anticipated dispatches down significantly to where we're only running in the late spring and summer is how our model is working. So in addition to that, natural gas prices are quite a bit lower, about 25% lower than they were last year. So those are the 2 big drivers in how we decrease those expenses. On purchase power, you can see that overall we're down about $2.4 million. Natural gas, which I just mentioned, is projected to be at about $3 an MMBTU in 16-17 compared to $3.88 in 15-16. Transmission costs are up almost $4.4 million, and that's due to forecasted load growth and just higher transmission costs in SPP. The historical trend that we've seen in our transmission costs continue to rise, and I found a few things on Xcel's websites. One is that they have created 3 transmission companies to anticipate the changes in transmission in SPP, and then they've made no secret about the fact that they plan to invest $2 billion in transmission assets in the next 2 years. So we can anticipate our costs to increase. Capacity went down about $2.7 million. Each year in July, SPS trues up the cost of capacity every 12 months, and they set a rate for the next 12 months. Last year, we expected that rate to be about $7.70 per kW. This year, we anticipate it to be about $7.28. And that's the decrease that you see there in the $2.6 million. Professional services and training budget decreased $341,000. The largest increase is related to legal expenses for our ERCOT transition. It's $500,000. Professional services are lower because we took out a pole contact study, and there were charges related to 2019 studies and those sorts of things. We'd increased training and travel by $114,000, and that is largely due to us getting ready to be a transmission owner and operator and getting our folks up to speed. Finally, the contracted services is up $125,000, and that is so that we can have a master engineer to oversee all of the engineering of our transmission projects. At the fund level, debt service increased about $750,000, just due strictly to the debt that we issued this fiscal year. Indirect cost allocation that we received from the city actually went down just a bit at $57,000. Our franchise fee and property tax went down, and that's largely due to an error we found in the calculation in the 15-16 budget. But I just want everyone to rest assured that that is fixed in 16-17, and we are transferring the proper amount to the city, despite what the budget was. So, transfer to electric capital is up almost $4 million, and that's just the cash funding portion of our debt, or of our capital program that Andy mentioned earlier. And so overall, our total expenses decreased about $6.1 million. Yes, sir.
Just real quick, on that debt service,
Yes, sir.
you guys have a number that you guys would like to stay within. You were talking about some of the reserves that you have. Could you kind of maintain at a certain level with that, those utilizing some of those reserves, or?
Well, you can see that, I told you a moment ago that this year we're financing our capital program with about 21% cash, and you see how much we had to raise the cash transfer from 11 to 15 million just to get it to 21%, and so there was no way we could get up to that 35% threshold, and that's why our modeling has over time we will get there, but this year, because of the size and magnitude, that's been difficult. So with that 35-65 split, though, that's going to continue to keep our debt at very low levels comparatively. You look at LP&L today, we have, I believe it's about $1,100 per customer in debt, outstanding debt. A AAA rated utility has about $3,500 per customer, so we're at least a third of what a AAA would be. And even with this entire capital program, I would estimate that we will be up to about $2,400 per customer, so still well below the amount of leverage that some even AAA or AA, other AA related entities are. So we're mindful of that, but I think our blend of that 35-65 blend is very healthy and will be very good for our ratings going forward.
Appreciate it.
All right, so Andy briefly touched on the FERC uniform system of accounts. So rather than saying uniform system of accounts over and over, I'll just refer to it as our chart of accounts. But I thought before I jump into the details of the budget, I just wanted to explain a little bit about FERC accounting and why we have done it and how it has impacted our budgets moving forward. So, as you're all very well aware, we're seeking to become a member of ERCOT, and transmission owners in ERCOT receive that T-cost rate of return, typically about 1.5 times the debt service related to the financing of their transmission assets. The chart of accounts for FERC provides very specific details on items that should be included in any given account, and it breaks it down into the different functions or buckets. In fact, the FERC chart of accounts is about 300 pages long, and it goes all the way from balance sheet accounts all the way through the income statement, and provides sometimes pages just on one account. But in order for the PUC to consider a T-cost rate, all of the rate cases have to be submitted using the FERC uniform system of accounts, and this basically allows them to look at all rate cases on an apples-to-apples basis. So in 2015, we engaged NewGen Strategies, which is formerly JSTO. It's also the same firm that did our cost of service study, they did our rate study, and our financial model. So very talented folks, and they do this all the time. And so we basically took all of our fixed assets and converted them into the appropriate, we didn't convert them, we put them into the appropriate FERC function in order to identify the transmission assets that can be used in this TCOS filing. So based on these changes in the FERC inventory study, we have changed our budget to align with the FERC functions mentioned in the previous slide, rather than just kind of 27 different cost centers. So we've tried to group it much like we did the capital program, like Andy was talking about, so that you can look at it by function and see how it changed as a whole. In order to properly capture the cost, we had to create 8 new cost centers this year, and I think we're up to 27 this year. So this year's budget presentation is going to focus on the budget by function. So what are these functions that I'm talking about? Admin is, admin. And it's got legal, regulatory compliance, conservation, and education. It ends up kind of being the catch-all that doesn't fit somewhere else. Production is just what it sounds like. It's all of our production plants. Distribution is our distribution network with lines that are less than 60 kV. And transmission is anything greater than 60 kV. Customer services are billing, customer assistance, and collections. So I'll start with admin. You can see 2 of the new positions that we added were in admin. One was in regulatory compliance, electric cybersecurity compliance specialist, and that's actually going to report to Chris Sims. And we have lots of good compliance specialists on our physical assets, but we don't have anybody on the cyber network side. And so this person will be making sure we're in compliance with NERC regulations. On the legal side, we've added 1 legal assistant to help out Richard and Garrett as they guide us through this process to get ready for ERCOT. Overall, admin budget is up $698,000. These are the big changes. Maintenance is up about $80,000, and that's largely due to maintenance for this building. This is a pretty old building, and we did have a capital project, but that has been fully expended. And so we budgeted in the maintenance line item. Depending on the type of expense, we'll either capitalize it or put it in as maintenance, but for budget purposes, we put it here. Professional services and training is up $510,000, with $500 of that being for the legal expenses that we anticipate for ERCOT. And scheduled charges, I actually meant to mention this earlier. The scheduled charges are still relatively fluid at this point. The city of Lubbock's finance department is still working on their scheduled charges, and so this number can change. But for now, the scheduled charges are about $116,000 increase based on averages that we've seen over the last few years. We will have final numbers though next week. Production. This one is the easiest one to explain. You can see that they're down 8 positions, and this is all due to the reorganization based on that unit contingent contract with Cook Station. And Mr. Taylor brought this up. You can see that 6 left production operations, all 15 left Cook Station, and a large majority shifted over to Massendale Station and or Brandon, which I'll show you in just a second. And then we had 1 person that actually, or 1 position that actually transferred from production to distribution. So 7 cuts and 1 transfer gets us to down 8 positions in production. And here you can see the actual cuts. There's in production operations, there was a plant foreman, Cook Station, a shift foreman, Brandon, 2 control room operators, and a chemist. Massengale, we cut 1 vacant shift foreman and control room operator, and then the mechanic that we transferred to distribution. And again, all of those were vacant. So overall, production functional expenses were down $11.5 million. I've already discussed fuel and purchase power, so when you exclude those, the budget is down $2.3 million. Oops, sorry, I thought I had some more highlighted. Down $2.3 million, and this is all related to decreasing water and sewer expenses related to those steam turbines, and then the reorganization of the 8 people that are no longer in these cost centers. So in transmission and distribution, This is the first time that we've ever broken out transmission as its own function. And so the two have always been blended. And so in order to compare these on an apples-to-apples basis, you've got to look at them together. Next year, a year from now, when we've got a year's worth of history, we can look at transmission by itself and distribution by itself. But for this year, we're going to look at them together. You can see there's lots of shifting around within the distribution department, and that's actually pretty normal. We have an apprentice program that somebody may start under the underground lines, and then they'll put them over in customer service, or they'll put them in substations, or they'll put them in overhead, just so they can get experience in all of those areas. But overall, you can see that it's up 6 positions. 5 of those are new positions, 3 of which are engineering related, 2 are GIS related, and then we transferred in the mechanic apprentice from production. So there's your 6 spots. Overall, up $539,000. Compensation and benefits are related to the 6 folks that are here in 16-17 that they weren't in 15-16. Maintenance is up primarily due to historical costs and year-to-date expenses that we've seen so far. Professional services is up $78,000, and that's largely due to us getting ready to be a transmission owner and operator and getting all of our folks up to speed. Finally, on the capital outlay and reimbursements, it's up $37,000. That's to buy a new, or that's to replace a new scanner and plotter for the engineering guys. And I think that's the machine that we have right now is over 10 years old and past its useful life. And then our SCADA folks needed new computer hardware to get ready for all of the transmission upgrades. Yes, sir.
Chet, is meter reading included in distribution?
No, sir. It'll be in customer
All
service.
right, I'm still jumping.
You're good.
Okay.
I know you're awake. All right, customer service. You can see lots of changes here. We've done some reorganization, getting ready for 16-17, but overall, no additions, no cuts, still 109 employees. So,
Back up.
sorry.
016?
So that's a reclassification between field services.
Right.
Historically, meter reader, what the meter reader cost center included everybody, again, field services, meter reading, and collections, and so those have been split into 3 different cost centers.
Is that FERC compliant?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
That is related to that.
Okay.
So, FERC considers field services, meter reading, and collections as 3 distinct operations. No, it's all good. So, based on this information, we created 2 new cost centers. Field services is a new one, collections is a new one, and we just left meter reading where it was. So, on the customer service side, we consolidated, we had a customer care cost center and a customer service cost center. We consolidated those into customer service, and then the customer care cost center became our new payment processing operation. So again, no new positions were added or cut. They're just reorganized based on our FERC functions and operations. Overall, this is down $80,000 in customer service, with lots of changes in between and shifting of dollars within the function. But really, the main driver is we cut $75,000 of credit card expenses, what we pay the credit card companies in order to accept credit cards. And that's based on a historical trend and what we've seen so far year to date.
Is that because there were fewer transactions or because we had a lower?
No. A few years ago when we, and Dana could speak to this if we get really far into the weeds, but a few years ago, the rate that Wells Fargo put us on was the government rate, not the utility rate. And the utility rate is actually significantly cheaper than the government rate. And so once we discovered that error, we have seen the cost decrease the last couple of years. And so based on that and what we're seeing so far this year, we felt comfortable cutting $75,000.
There's a way to, isn't there a way to recoup those costs though? The law used to be that if you accepted a credit card, you couldn't charge an extra fee, but they changed that law now. Have we looked at recouping those costs from people who pay
Well,
$75,000?
we have had several conversations with Wells Fargo, and
Are you talking about recouping from the customer?
Yeah, if they use a credit card, they have to pay an extra 1 or 2%.
Yeah. One of the issues that you face there is the credit card rules if you charge a convenience fee for a customer using a Visa, MasterCard, whatever, then they also require that you charge a convenience fee for a check or any other form of payment to be fair across all standards. And so they do not, I don't know that they nullify an agreement or anything because you're doing it, but there are some ways to get around that. But I know, and I don't know, Dana, do you know how many utilities in the state? Are there very many out there that are actually charging convenience fee?
The only one I'm aware of is Austin Energy.
Okay. Technically it's built into the rates, that the customers are paying. It's just spread across the entire group of customers rather than the few that are using their credit card. But
It's a small amount.
in the scheme of things, it is, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then don't we want more people to use that method so we can be paid?
Absolutely. Really the cost, the fees that we pay for MasterCard, Visa are probably very small compared to the cost to process a check and collection efforts and that kind of thing on checks. So it other than cash, it's probably the most economical way to take it.
All right, so these are our funding sources. These are the big movers, big drivers. Interest earnings, we doubled based on the expected interest yields on the Fed funds rate. When they did that back in the spring, they doubled it from quarter percent to half. General consumer meters is up 5.75% due to the base rate. Purchase power recovery revenues, we try to, as you guys know, we try to pass through exactly dollar for dollar. And so since our expenses are down, we anticipate the revenues to be down. Unit contingent is down as a result of restructuring that unit contingent agreement with Excel and getting rid of the steam turbines in that agreement. Power marketing is down based on the changes in our model and lower gas prices. Outside work orders are up and fees and charges are down, and those are just based on those are fairly hard to predict. But the last 3 or 4 years we have been over our budget on outside work orders and under our budget on fees and charges. So we felt like we had enough data to make an informed decision to change those. Yes, sir.
Okay, so just tell me a little bit about the fees and charges. Is that like activation fees?
That's everything from
Rehook fees?
when we roll a truck to go reconnect, when we have late payment charges, when we have tampering fees. We've got a whole list of them, and I can get you the detail on that. Outside work orders is when we're installing new infrastructure out in the field. So that's either new street lights or new underground lines, mostly new underground lines. And some of it's overhead as well.
What would be an example of tampering fees?
Yes.
What would be an example of tampering?
Mr. Bell, exactly what are you looking for, like dollar volume or
No,
what's
what
happening?
is it someone stealing electricity?
Right.
Yeah, so we've got two different types of tampering fees. You've got the kind that the guy pays his bill, but he goes out and reconnects the service before we come out to reconnect. That's a flat fee. And then you have the kind that's tampering that we file charges on, the police come out and take pictures, and we go through that whole process.
So somebody resets their meter.
Right. This is one of the real benefits of going through this exercise. I know people about budgets at school, but you learn so much about just the nuts and bolts of the business just by going through the budget here. Now, I got a question. The franchise fee equivalent, I think we've had this conversation before in that kind of accounting school. We collect that, but don't we turn around and pay that basically back to the city?
We do, yes, sir.
So we're just holding it, we're just the transition holder.
We're an intermediary.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
And on the city's CAFR, I've had this discussion, I know, a couple of times with some of those folks about whether that's really even our revenue at all, as far as an enterprise activity bucket, whether that's really part of the general fund when you get right down to it.
We're into that and the gateway fund. They split 60% to the general fund and 40% to the gateway fund. but that's their prerogative. So,
Right.
you're exactly right. So, I won't read you all that because we just talked about it. And that. The last one, expenses are anticipated to exceed revenues by $670,000. Like Andy mentioned earlier, we're intentionally drawing down the general reserve by that amount. So if you guys don't have any more questions on the budget itself,
Are we gonna talk about capital in this? Are you gonna talk about capital?
I
after
don't
that?
have anything else on capital. Andy had covered that pretty extensively last time.
Okay. Can I ask you a couple of questions?
And it's out of Jack there, it's
Yeah.
very well detailed.
Right. Can I ask you a couple of questions about
Sure.
that? So, Andy, I just want to make sure that I understand, when you were talking about the billing system, is that item 201, 4045, or the other customer service information system? Is that?
Yes, that is correct. So the budget for this year is about $2 million. It is $2 million. But then over the next 5 years, you'll see the total is about 40.8 million.
Okay. Okay. I just want to be clear that that's not $40 million we're spending.
No, sir. The 2 million really this year, like I said, was a lot of that is going to developing the scope, developing the specifications for the billing system, as well as the meter data management system, the communication networks, all of those associated items that would go along with advanced metering.
Okay. And the two other things, the control system upgrade at Massagale, was that something that we, when it shows appropriation today, is that something that we did in the previous budget?
That project, I believe, if I'm correct, that project was originally in this year's
Okay.
budget, and that's one of those that the design and engineering was not far enough along for us to actually let a contract on that. So y'all did a budget amendment a few months ago to move some of that out. That reduced our need to issue $2 million or $2.6 million in debt. So that shifted the need to issue that debt till the next fiscal
So
year.
that was part of our training, that was part of our.
Yes, we shifted out $13-14 million into the future, I believe, was the amount at that budget amendment, and that's included here.
Okay, and would the same be true then of 92404, the 150 kV line from Northwest to McKinsey? Was that somewhere in there I was thinking that was a,
92404.
or maybe it was the chonker that was in the previous budget.
Roger was the big one where we increased the appropriation like $11 million. We did that budget a few months ago.
Right. It's the 15.2 underline upgrades and construction.
Yeah, that one, we did reduce that in the current fiscal year we only reduced it by 4.2 million. There was still a large amount of money in the future for that project. We just, again, that was one of those where we reduced it to get that engineering and design taken care of, and then issue the debt when we actually really need it.
Okay. That's one of them, yeah. That's one of them. Okay. I'm good on that.
Any other questions? This is, we're happy to go through anything that y'all might have a question on capital or the operating side. So, and again, we're going to be presenting the final numbers to y'all next month. There'll be probably an abbreviated presentation from this, but because we have what we think are very immaterial changes between now and next week related to the schedule charges and all that. But if y'all think of any questions over the next week, we'll be happy to answer those at the next meeting as well. So.
Any other questions on Kevin?
Excellent.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to mention, and Jamie and Dana are sitting out here in the audience, some of the changes that have occurred in the customer service side of the house, very pleased. We've had 2 promotions for these ladies. Dana is going to be shifting her responsibilities and organization, taking on a very large project. She'll be taking on a lot of the big projects in the customer service side of the house, the new billing system, the advanced meters, and so she has agreed to take on that role, and so she is shifting a little bit. So she's still the same place as she's always been, but she'll be taking on that. And Jamie is going to be adding to her portfolio of responsibilities the customer service aspect of it, the call center basically. And we've also had some promotions within the call center too, as we've kind of shifted around. We've created what we're calling a customer relationship division, and we're calling a customer support division. The customer relationship would be all the call center reps and the tellers or the cashiers at the front, and then the customer support are those who are helping the call center and assisting our customers with problems. So I just wanted to point them out. Jamie's on the left, Amy's on the right if y'all don't know them, but they're two spectacular employees. They're real shining stars in our organization, and we're very pleased that they've taken on these new roles, and there's a number of others in the organization that have gotten some promotions, well-deserved, but something that structures the customer service part of our business to where I think you'll start seeing a lot of changes throughout, especially with this large capital project on the board. That's really going to provide a lot of benefit to us. Also, I wanted to point out Jeremy Dixon's out here on the second row. He's a new employee in the finance department. He's going to be an electric utility financial analyst for us, and so he's going to be really diving into all the contracts with SBS and all the rate modeling and all that stuff for us. So we're very pleased to have Jeremy as well. So any more questions on the budget? Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
All right. There's no more questions on that. We'll talk about the tariff and rate schedule highlights. There is a 5.75% increase that we've talked about ad nauseum, and so I won't walk you through that piece. We know it's there, but I wanted to highlight you on some of the other changes. Net metering for commercial customers is something that we have added this year, and so what we've done it for small commercial and large commercial. You can see in that second column, that's what small commercial rate 10 that uses an average of 1,000 kWh would look like. And it's going to be constant in this scenario, this analysis, at $78.91. The next column is rate 11, which is our small general service net metering. And what this column is looking at is that 1,000 kWh less any solar that they produce. So what we've done is change it in 25% increments. So in that first one, if they produce 250 kWh, they save $13. If they produce 500 kWh, they save $26, etc. All the way down to if they produce all 1,000 kilowatt hours of solar, they would be saving $51.51. Same idea for large commercial, except all that's changed is the billing determinants and the dollars. 45 kW and 16,000 kWh, but again, the idea remains the same. What happens if they produce a quarter of their total usage, half, 3/4, and all of it? You can see that they can save in the summertime anywhere from $129 to $518, and in the winter, $125 up to $503.
Can you back up a little bit?
Yes.
So what is that percentage on the summer usage that they say 626 at 145?
A little more than that.
Okay.
And then about the same. So for net metering, any of our customers that have installed distributed generation, we're going to require them to sign an interconnection agreement and actually be on a net metering rate. And then any commercial customers on the net metering rate will not be eligible for the time of use rate. 6-month look back, tariff implements a 6-month historical adjustment period, allowing customers to claim adjustments on their account, whether that be based on a valid rate dispute or meter reading inaccuracy. And this basically mirrors the rules of the PUC, and then I believe that the water department does this as well. So it's just getting us consistent with them. Yes, sir.
How many customers do we have on this?
On net metering rates, I think we have 5 for the residential, and we don't have any on commercial because it hasn't been approved yet.
Okay, so basically with this tariff rates, if they have a a solar production that produces all of their electricity, they're still paying about 60% of the cost.
Right.
Whereas they would be paying about 30% to us as a cost, because 70% is the pass-through. And so they're paying about 60% of this new tariff.
Yeah, that's about right. And that's largely to serve as their backup and to still recover our fixed costs.
Pays for our infrastructure, pays for the new, pays for.
Right. That's right. And we had NewGen double check all this and run it through the cost of service model to make sure that we were accounting for all those things like you said. The demand cap, we are phasing that out. If you'll recall, last year we did the first step and have implemented that. And essentially what we're doing is trying to encourage an efficient use of our system, but the way that the rate is designed right now, it encourages inefficient use of our system. We originally thought this would be a 4 or 5 year phase out, but the way the math has worked, it's going to end up being a 3-year phase out. But we've made sure that no customer will see more than 20% adjustment on the demand piece of the bill. So this fiscal year, in 16-17, we're proposing phase 2. It's going to end up being about a 13% phase out for this fiscal year instead of 20. And we did look at the full 20%, but it was actually going to be a little bit easier on the customers this year, and then we'll do the remaining half of next year. So I'm just going to walk you through an example. For a customer that's got about 175,000 kWh and about 3,500 kW, right now that customer is paying for about 2,600 kW out of the almost 3,500 that they're using. So what we're doing is we're continuing to lower that divisor, and you can see that the quotient changes from 2614 to 3,021 kW. So we've almost got them all the way there. And so you can see it's about a 15.5% increase in terms of the kW that they're paying for it, and then we'll change the divisor by about 13%. So what does that translate to? Last year, we estimated, based on some historical data that we had, that 753 customers would be impacted by this. In 16-17, we're looking at about 694, meaning that we've got 59 customers that are paying their full freight on the demand that they use. So it shows us that it's working, and we anticipate that 694 will drop pretty significantly next year, because that will capture most of the folks that aren't quite paying their full load. So with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Any questions on the tariff? So those cover everything that's been modified in here. There's not like a red line version of the tariff.
If you've got your budget book we handed out last time, there's a clean version and a red version.
Okay, yeah, oh, there it is. There it is.
That was part of what made the book so thick.
Yeah, there are some changes that we are making right now and under review. They're minor changes. So for the next week's board meeting, you'll have another kind of red line. We'll have some, and we'll point out what changes we've made from what you have in your hands right now versus what you're going to get next week. But again, they're relatively minor. There's some tweaks on some of the net metering rate tariffs, but we'll point that out, but nothing substantial.
Mr. Booth?
And we have. That's one of the changes we made. For the small commercial and for the residential, it's specific to solar. No. Well, the current code does not allow that. Code ordinance does not allow wind turbines on residential customers. So it didn't make sense, at least for residents, to have. It is. There are some allowances for that. So in the commercial net metering rate, there is the allowance for wind. So it'll be wind and solar in that rate class.
I've heard that we had one customer in the network meter that, came to us complaining because they spent $30,000 on solar. Now they see the numbers, they realize the payback is way out there. Is anyone, when they get it, what it's costing them to put in the system, their maintenance versus our maintenance on our power plants, are people really saving any money? Are they, I know some of them are just doing it because they want to be green, but I have a neighbor, I have a neighbor looking into it. And I've advised them that, if they're doing it for money, don't do it. Am I accurate there?
I think you are accurate. The examples that we've seen firsthand have not demonstrated a payback, really. Our rates in Lubbock are some of the lowest in the country, and it doesn't pay for itself. Now again, like you're right, if you're doing it out of willingness just to be green and that sort of thing, that's fine. But yeah, from a money standpoint, we haven't seen that at this point in time. Now, as solar comes down, there will be a point in time where it may be making some sense, but it doesn't seem to be that way right now. It may make some sense in California or some of the other states that have really high electricity costs, but certainly not here.
Other questions, comments?
Mr. Bell had asked a question earlier about how we credit the usage into that rating rate, and just want everybody to understand that the way that we do it right now, whatever, if they overproduce in a given month, it gets zeroed out. They basically we don't allow them to bank credits from one month to the next, and that's a little different. Some utilities do allow banking. Some utilities pay for that electricity on an avoided cost basis, but the way our tariff is set up, we don't do that. It's basically you produce everything you use in a month, you don't pay any fuel charge from us, but if you overproduce, you don't get any credit for that either.
I think what we're doing seems responsible to me, because if we started paying, how many meters do we have? Every one of those would be a competitor, essentially. And so, in the big picture of things, it seems that wouldn't be a responsible thing to do to our service. I don't know. It'd be hard to do.
Well, I think the way the tariff is set up, the way Andy has set this tariff up is very beneficial to keeping the stability of this industry. But we're spending $100 million on transmission also for the next 4 or 5 years. And we have to recoup those. And the economic model if you want to go green, like you said, that's a different issue. But if it's just dollars and cents, the way our tariff is set up, you really don't benefit. Instead of paying 30%, you're paying 60% plus. You don't get credit for the overage if you only use 1,000 kilowatts per month, but you produce 2,000 kilowatts per month. You don't like that. So I think it's a very smart way. The solar industry is not going to like it a whole lot. I understand that. But I don't think we're a real target because what Amy just said, our cost of electricity in this town is very, very cheap. Just go to Honolulu if you want to, or Connecticut. And you'll probably want solar. It's 4 times what we pay.
I think there are some unscrupulous solar salesmen out there too, so if you do have friends that are asking about it, ask them to holler at us and we can help them.
Yeah, they look at the proposal from the solar people and make a decision, and then they find the real facts out later. That's what happened to my neighbor. Fortunately, they haven't made the investment. They're just looking into it.
The way our tariff system is set up, there's no payment.
Well, other comments or questions? Mr. Berger, thank you.
Thank you.
You and Mr. Sales, excellent job. Appreciate the level of detail. Appreciate the book and all of the slides. And I look forward to next week when we can approve the budget tariff. So I believe that covers all of our agenda for today. So any other business will be adjourned.